Hello, this is a tutorial video for installing the EverSync virtual backup software. Either through placing an order or visiting our website at eversyncsolutions.com, you will eventually receive an email that will look something like this. There is a thank you note, a description of what it is that you've ordered, and some next steps. The first thing you'll do is click this link to begin downloading our Windows installer package. This is something that should be saved to a desktop or your downloads folder for later use. We'll take a look at that in just a moment. We also provide a quick start guide. This is an invaluable guide. It will lead you step by step through the process of installing our virtual backup software. Let's now take a look at the file that downloaded. In my downloads folder, I have this EverSync VSA setup. Your version may vary as we continue to make upgrades and improvements, but go ahead and run this installation package. We'll click on Run. This will run our setup wizard, which will guide us step by step in creating an OVF file that we'll eventually use to create our virtual machine. Click on Next. You can define where you would like to install. The install process may take a few minutes to complete. Once the installation is complete, you'll be prompted to finish and close the wizard. If we follow the Quick Start guide, our next steps will be to go ahead and begin creating the VM. We create the new virtual machine by deploying an OVF template. The Deploy OVF Template window will open up and guide you through the steps to create the virtual machine. Browse out to the location where the OVF template file was installed. Then click Next. At this point, you can name your virtual backup software anything you'd like. This will be the name of the actual VM as it resides in your vSphere environment. Once you've named it, click Next. You'll need to define where the VM can be created, so select the appropriate storage location. At this point, you can choose to thick or thin provision the appliance as needed. If you have questions on the differences between thin and thick provisioning, or on any of this process, please feel free to contact the EverSync support team for assistance. At this point, you can click on Finish, and the VM will be created. You'll notice there's an option to power on after deployment. We're recommending you do not enable that because we may have some customization options after the VM is created, and we want to take care of those before powering up for the first time. We'll go ahead and click on Finish. Once the virtual machine has been created and the VMDKs have been deployed, you will notice your new EverSync virtual machine listed out in your vSphere client under your host. Let's take a look at some of the configuration and customization options before we power on this virtual machine. We're going to edit the settings for this VM. This would be the best time to change anything you'd like about the VM. For example, you might choose to add additional memory or another network adapter and so forth. You'll notice there are 3 hard disks created. Hard disk 1 is provisioned at 2 GB. This is where the Eversync OS lives and boots from. You will not want to make any changes to this disk. Hard disk 2 is the database volume. It is recommended that the database volume be moved to an SSD data store for faster performance. Let's go through an example of removing hard disk 2 and replacing it with a different VMDK. To remove this disk, click to highlight, then click Remove. Be sure to select the radio button to remove from virtual machine and delete files from disk. You may need to bring back the Edit Settings window. You'll notice I now have only 2 disks. We're going to recreate hard disk 2. So we click on Add. Choose hard disk. We'll take the default option to create a new virtual disk. We'll want to set the correct size. For performance, it is recommended that this disk be created thick provisioned and lazy zeroed. And we'll need to specify the data store to use. Please be sure that the virtual device node is SCSI01. This is how the software knows that this disk is intended for the database volume. It is also recommended that the disk be in independent and persistent mode. We'll go ahead and finish. We've now recreated hard disk 2. Hard disk 3 is the volume that the backup data is saved to. By default, this is provisioned at 2 terabytes, and now would be the best time to change that if your license allows you to. Please note that you will only be allowed to use as much space as your license key provides. To move or to recreate this disk, you can follow a very similar process to what we've just done for hard disk 2. Let's go ahead and click on OK, and then we'll power on our new virtual machine. You could watch the machine power on through the console. I'll pause the recording for just a moment until the VM has finished booting. You may see several different messages flashing across the bottom of the screen. For the most part, these can be ignored until an actual login prompt is presented. Once the VM has booted, you'll be presented with this login screen. The username is admin, and the password is RVXD2D2D. Go down to login and press enter. You'll notice the appliance has picked up an address at 172.16.2.55. That's something that it picked up via DHCP in my network. You may have something similar. But if you'd like to assign a specific IP address, just press enter to configure network devices. On the Edit Network screen, we'll assign a few things such as name, client ID and addressing, etc. And submit. Once your changes have been saved, there's a few different ways to get the appliance to come up on the new address, but the easiest way is to reboot the VM. So we'll go down to Reboot, click Enter, or press the Enter key rather, and enter once again because we're sure, and enter once again. Once the system has rebooted, we'll switch over to our web browser for final configurations. Okay, our EverSync virtual backup has now rebooted, and we'll go ahead and access this via the web browser. You'll notice I have plugged in the same address that I assigned it earlier. And once again, the login is admin, and the same password for now, rvxd2d2d. The first thing that comes up once we're logged in is a welcome screen, and you can see that we need to enter in our subscription key. You might recall the email that you received that we showed here earlier. You can simply copy and paste that into the subscription key box. Once the key is in, click Validate. And you'll see the description for your virtual backup and whether or not it's a trial edition. You'll also notice you have an expiration date. Once again, you're presented with a license agreement. You'll then be presented with the EverSync Quick Start Guide. This will let you configure things such as time zone, date, password, networking, interfaces, DNS configuration, a certificate, and finally you'll confirm changes you've made, and if you've made significant changes, you'll be prompted for one final reboot. After that, the system will be up and ready to begin adding clients. We'll take a look at adding clients in a few additional videos. Thank you.